Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So yeah, now we get to talk about the high octane, really exciting world of data management and data standards. Woohoo! Yeah. Um, yeah. Oh. Um, yeah, so I'm going to actually talk about two separate communities right now. First of all, I'll introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Pete Selby, coming from Cornell University. Um, I am a software engineer by training. I'm also the BrAPI project coordinator, also known as the BrAPI guy. Um, so that's my primary role. So I'll be talking about the BrAPI project as well as the AgBioData consortium. So these are a couple of communities focused on data standards and data management. So um, yeah, so talking about these two. So first, talking about AgBioData. So what is AgBioData? Formed in 2015. It is a consortium of more than 40 GGB databases. You can see the list I pulled off their website up there, if you can read that. These are community databases managing various types of data, but yeah, generally genomic, genetic, and breeding data. The AgBioData Consortium came together to focus on standardization, both data standardization as well as best practices, different visualization things, just a collaborative effort. So trying to standardize across the community of GGB data to bring some standardization to the processes and to the data. This also was intended to sort of join the larger scientific community, embracing the FAIR data principles. So I hope everyone has heard of FAIR at this point. If you haven't heard of FAIR, look it up, please. But FAIR stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable. This is concept for scientific data to yeah, make it easier to use, easier to access, and sort of best practices guidelines when publishing and storing scientific data. Okay. So yeah, AgBioData started in 2015 as sort of a volunteer consortium getting things going. More recently in 2020, 2021, something like that, they applied for and received a NSF RCN grant to try and formalize this community and try and formalize a lot of the practices and standards that they were working with. This came with sort of a roadmap to try and bring the different groups as part of this consortium together and agree on some of these standards to just make better, more fair data processes overall for the community. The primary way they've been doing this, a couple of different sort of main objectives. First is a webinar series. The first Wednesday of every month. Highly recommend you go check out their webinar series. The history of all the webinars is available online. You can go see all the recordings of the past sessions. They, we try and bring speakers in from all different disciplines and talking about a variety of things. Talking about computing, talking about novel research in plants. I think there was some insect researcher recently presenting. So there's a lot of really cool information that comes out of that webinar series. Yeah, so I highly recommend checking that out. So that's sort of the first big thing coming out of the AgBioData community. The other big one is the working groups. So they've been, I should say, we've been putting together these working groups over the past few years, trying to pull together key stakeholders and individuals within the community to work on certain problems, discuss certain problems within the community. You can see that the ones above the line here on this slide are the currently active ones that are going on right now. Everything below the line is finished up as a working group in past years. And so yeah, a lot of things that I think are relevant to the folks in this room. I'm not going to have time to talk about all of these. Again, go check out the website. There are links to all of these working groups on the AgBioData website. You can see what the past groups have been working on, and there's been a number of white papers published out of each of these groups, making different recommendations to the community, different resources coming out of these. I will be talking about these two with some familiar names you might recognize there. So the Data Federation Working Group and then the Data Federation Training Working Group, these were sort of consecutive groups that sort of one led into the other. So I'm going to talk about these a little bit. First of all, what are we talking about with Data Federation? That was one of the first things the working group was trying to define that for ourselves. And yeah, we came up with this little diagram here, sort of showing the scale of data sharing and data interoperability. So yeah, on one end, you can absolutely have interoperable systems and share data with physical files or handwritten notes through the mail or what have you. And then as you add more and more technology, more and more automation, you get more towards what we were talking about in terms of sort of true federation of data sources, where you have many different databases perhaps in the background, but it all seamlessly integrates together. The data seamlessly integrates together. You can search and query that data without needing to know where it necessarily lives or what the source of it is, but it all integrates together automatically without the user really having to think about it. So that's where we started talking about data federation within the AgBioData community. And one of the things we quickly realized, and we sent out a survey to the community, was trying to figure out where this community of databases sort of was in terms of federation, where they were in terms of data sharing, what we were able to do and accomplish. This is one of the, I didn't include this here on this slide, but sort of one of the questions was talking about blockers to data sharing, and the sort of the top three blockers were resources, time, and knowledge. And fortunately, we're not in a position where we could do anything about resources. We can't make any more time, so knowledge was the next best thing we could work on within this working group. So this is one of the questions we were asking in the survey, trying to get an idea for what areas people in the community knew about, and sort of what technologies were a little more unknown, and we could try and do some educational things. So after that survey, and the survey, I think I put the link on there. Yeah, the survey and the results of the survey was published in a white paper if you want to go look at those results in a little more detail. What that led to was the next working group, which was the Data Federation Training Working Group, where we wanted to try and put together some training material for some of the technologies that people were lacking in the community. Now, of course, none of us in this working group were experts in all of these technologies either. So, our decision was to invite the experts to come speak. And so we've got a collection of notes and recordings about sort of introductions to all these different technologies available. It's all on a GitHub wiki at the moment. More contributions are welcome from the community if there's more contributions out there. We sort of ran out of time and resources ourselves a little bit, but everything we collected is there and available. And yeah, trying to share that with the rest of the AgBioData community and anyone else who's interested in sort of getting an introduction to any one of these technologies. Okay, that's AgBioData and some of the things AgBioData does. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit to BrAPI, which is what I do. So what is BrAPI? BrAPI stands for the Breeding API. So BrAPI is a standardized RESTful web service API specification for digitally exchanging breeding-related data and metadata. So I've got another set of slides where I go into each one of these terms and really break it down. I don't think we really need to do that. Did I keep on here? I did keep an API just so we can all be on the same page. This was one of the notes I wrote down on the pad here, sort of defining an API. So just like you have a GUI or user interface, GUI, where a person, a user is interacting with a piece of software, they're submitting data, they're reading data off of it, they're submitting commands, that sort of thing. An API is an interface where one piece of software can talk to another one. And there's a bunch of different flavors and varieties of how that works. So that's where the RESTful web service API comes in. That's just the flavor of API that we're talking about here. In particular, this is the important part about BrAPI. BrAPI is a standardized specification. So at its core, it's a set of documentation defining a standardized set of data models and the specification on how to use those data models and interact with those data models. So yeah, it's a data standard for interacting with breeding and related data. Excuse me. So yeah, we can see here, these are all, most if not all of the different models that the BrAPI specification supports. So under each one of these terms here in the map, these are all concepts, and each concept is going to have a set of fields that are related to that concept. So yeah, we call those data models modeling a particular concept. Broken up into these 4 segments, mostly for organizational purposes, just because it was getting big enough that I was losing my mind trying to keep it all straight. So yeah, keeping it organized. We have the BrAPI core, which is talking about programs, trials, studies, sort of experimental organization. The BrAPI germplasm, talking about different germplasm crosses, pedigrees, that sort of those sort of concepts. The genotyping modules taught everything related to genotyping, particularly variants. It borrows heavily from the VCF standard. And the BrAPI phenotyping, dealing with phenotypic observations, ontologies, images, that sort of thing. So this is just a little example of what it might look like, how it sort of works. When you implement the BrAPI standard in a piece of software, typically you've got a client application and a server application, and you've got these mapping layers. The request builder, the response handler, and the object mapping layer are there to map your internal data structures, however you represent your data internally, map that to the BrAPI standard. The BrAPI standard data models get passed over HTTP as a request to the server. The server then maps it back out of BrAPI into their own internal data structures, does whatever it needs to do, store some data, look up some data, perform some analysis, whatever, and then passes a response back to the client that made the request, again, using that mapping back and forth. So this is a way for all these different applications to speak the same language without interfering with their internal data structures and how they do things internally. It's just a translation layer between applications so they can communicate and interoperate between each other. Okay, talking about the community. BrAPI community currently have, I think that this slide might be a little old, the number's probably a little bigger. At least 37 registered partner organizations. It's really, really easy to become a registered partner organization. You send me an email with your logo and I put it on the website. We've got roughly 250 breeders, software developers, data managers, other experts in various fields as sort of part of the mailing list and the Slack channel, as sort of the registered community. We do have an elected advisory board, sort of guiding the long-term view of the project. These are sort of the members of the community that I know about. I still somewhat regularly get people who email me out of the blue saying, hey, I was trying to implement this and I have a question. And I was like, I'm happy to answer your question. I don't know who you are or where you're coming from, why I haven't talked to you before. But yeah, I can answer your question. So that still happens occasionally. So tough to say exactly how big the community is, but that's the group that I know about. Yeah, I like to show this slide, sort of the international nature of this project. Got support and input from all of these different groups around the world, sort of defining these data models and these standards. And hackathons. So this is the big way that the BrAPI community comes together to decide on a lot of these things is we run annual hackathons. And I've been running the annual hackathons since 2018. And so, yeah, these hackathons are the groups coming together in the same location. Our most recent one was in Germany this past spring. And we spend a week discussing the standard and any issues or anything that comes up with that, any changes that need to be made. But primarily, I really encourage people to collaborate, bring different research groups together, different development groups together to collaborate on different projects, make their data interoperable with each other, or build a project together for doing something useful. Yeah, some of the applications and impacts. These are a few of the applications that we have that are BrAPI compatible. There's a full list on brapi.org. Yeah, there's a lot of applications out there that are BrAPI compatible now. You don't have to implement the whole standard to be BrAPI compatible. That doesn't make sense in a lot of cases. No system, or very, very few systems, have all of the data that is represented in the BrAPI standard. So just saying that a system is BrAPI compatible doesn't mean it has the whole thing. It just has some piece of it that it can interact with some BrAPI compliant data to perform something useful. Couple of the sort of example use cases. The KSU Fieldbook app, oh, it's not KSU anymore, the Fieldbook app is BrAPI compatible, so being able to download field layout data from your system, from your database, bring that into the app, walk around, collect manual phenotypes using the app, and then automatically push all those observations back up into your storage system. That's all set in Fieldbook, so no more file transfers or anything like that. It's all in the app. Download, export. Sort of trying to get to that place where the technology disappears. You don't have to worry about file management, anything like that. This was project was working for a while. I don't know if it's still in production anymore, but we do have this pipeline set up with genotyping labs. So being able to send sample data, sample metadata in particular, as a request to a genotyping lab, saying here's a request to do some genotyping, followed up by a physical shipment, and all the paperwork and everything that goes along with that, and then being able to track that process in the lab and receive results back and store those in the appropriate genotyping database. That's all possible. Couple of different groups looking at different sort of generalized analysis engines, pulling data via BrAPI from a few different sources, doing some analysis, and maybe turning that into a quick visualization. A bunch of different examples of that sort of thing. And finally, BrAPs. These are small, usually single web page visualizations that you can bring into any application, and as long as your data source is BrAPI compatible, they'll just work in theory. And you can these are developed by the community in quick and easy ways to add some visualization or functionality to your web page or your project. So encourage you all to join these two communities. Both of these QR codes will bring you to the AgBioData community and to the BrAPI contact page. And I think that's it. If there are any questions.